Have you downloaded your free copy of the Biblio Lifestyle 2023 Spring Reading Guide? It's a free downloadable PDF guide that shares some of the best new books of the season, along with a list of fun things to do, spring-themed recipes, and tips to help improve your reading life. So visit springreadingguide.com to download your free copy of the 2023 Spring Reading Guide. That's springreadingguide.com for your free copy of the 2023 Spring Reading Guide. Now, on to the episode. Hello, I'm Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. Today on the couch, I'm so excited to welcome author Ren DeStefano. We talk about her adult debut thriller, How I'll Kill You. How I'll Kill You is a serial killer thriller about identical triplets who seduce their marks before killing them. But when one sister falls in love, she has to decide where her loyalties lie. Lauren also talks about rereading books, she shares reading tips, plus we get lots of bookstore, and true crime podcast recommendations. And we talk about lots more. So let's get into the episode because I can't wait for you to listen to my chat with author Ren DeStefano. Hi there, could you do me a favor really quick? Would you pretty please subscribe to the show, leave me a 5-star rating if you like it, and share an episode or two with your bookish friends? Better yet, if you could drop a link to the show or to your favorite episode in your book club or bookish group chat, that works too. I promise it only takes a few seconds, it really helps the show, plus I'll be incredibly grateful for it. So thanks in advance, and now on to the episode. Hi readers, welcome again to the Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me is someone who, when not writing thrillers, is listening to true crime podcasts and crocheting way too many blankets. But she's here on the couch to talk to me about her new novel, How I'll Kill You. Please welcome to the couch, author Ren DeStefano. Hey, Lauren.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! I'm super excited to have you here as well. I mean, your new book, it's a wild ride, let me just say that. How I'll Kill You, it's available now. Readers can get their hands on a copy, walk straight into a bookstore, go to their library. I mean, as an author, how are you feeling? How excited are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Many readers will know, but some may not, that I've been writing young adult and children's since about 2011. And in that entire time, I've always had in the back of my mind an idea that I'd like to write an adult, but I wasn't quite sure of the genre or what I would like to do. And about 10 years into writing, I just somehow had this idea, and I'm so excited that it's here.
Yay! I'm super excited too, and just glad to hear it. Now you've crossed over. Adult fiction is here. So tell us, Lauren, I want readers to hear straight from you. Tell us about How I'll Kill You and what can readers expect when they pick up your book?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's entirely expected, but I've noticed that over the past few years there's been a lot of wonderful media and fiction in the world of kind of serial killers as a POV character. So our main character, she's a serial killer in training. She's a triplet, and her two sisters have just wrought havoc along the coastline, the West Coast, and she's done the cleanup, and she's done it out of loyalty and family and just obligation. And her sisters have been pressuring her that now is your time. Now is your time to find somebody and kind of prove your worth to us. And so she ends up meeting her intended target, and things don't go exactly as planned. She starts to feel a bit protective and maybe start to wonder how she's going to choose her sisters over this man that she's gradually feeling a fondness for, I'll say.
Right, right, absolutely. So let's get into the sisters. Again, triplets. There is Sissy, Moody, and Iris. Sissy is the one who needs to prove her worth. So to say, she's been the one doing the cleanup. She's the one who seemingly falls in love. So let's start with Sissy. Tell us about her, who she is as a character, and tell us about her life when she meets Edison.
Right. So she's considered to be the youngest, although all three sisters were abandoned at birth. They don't actually know their birth order, but she's treated as the youngest, and she's seen as sort of doe-eyed and innocent and a bit naive by her sisters, and that's because of what they call her soft heart. And that is, part of what makes her such a great cleanup artist, because she loves her sisters so dearly and she wants to make sure that they're safe. She leaves no detail unchecked. She cleans everything. She even gives some tips on how to clean a mess. But when she meets Edison, he is a grieving 28-year-old widower. And as she's playing the part of this young singer, and she's not a triplet in this fantasy world she's concocted. And she starts to fall in love, not just with Edison, but with the idea of having a life independent of her sisters, and getting into the fantasy of, oh, we could get married, we could have a family, we could go on adventures together, and then quickly telling herself, stop it, that's not practical, that's not why we're here. And that's a conflict that's ongoing throughout the story.
Right, right, absolutely. Because that's also kind of part of the game with these sisters. It's you get to live out whatever fantasy you want, make this person desire you, live out your fantasy, and then off them, just get rid
Mhm.
of them. And when it gets to that point, Sissy realizes she'll have to choose between either, pursuing this with Edison, betraying her sisters, and, all that comes to a head, which I won't spoil. But let's talk about the other two sisters. So we have Moody and Iris. Tell us about these two characters in the novel.
So all three of them grew up in the foster system, and as part of their upbringing, they were often brought together and torn apart. So when they were born, they were this novelty triplets. They were in the news, abandoned triplets. How often does that happen? And everyone kind of coddled them and wanted them. And as they grew up and they became individual people, they fell through the cracks of the foster system. And so, because they had three very unique upbringings, they have different perspectives despite how close they are to each other. And Moody is a very impulsive, bitter, angry, jealous, and then sort of possessive sister. She really she's upset that they were torn apart so often. She just wanted to keep them together. And Iris, she kind of keeps a lot of what she went through sort of a secret. And as the three were growing up, she was always the one that she bullied them with the hope of making them stronger. She would sneak up behind them, maybe sort of strangle them, or kind of scare them, and say, fight me, show me what you're going to do, show me how you're going to protect yourself. And Sissy had sort of different upbringing. She was placed in a home, in a sort of a nuclear family, and she felt guilt for having it so good compared to how her sisters were. And her hang up was sort of that she saw how miserable and how much her sisters were struggling. And she made it her mission to sabotage any good thing that she had in her life. And the logic that the three of them had was, even if everything else is falling apart, as long as we have each other, as long as we're together, that's what matters. And now that they're adults, that's where they've come. That's sort of what their upbringing has taught them.
Right, right, absolutely. Well, I thought this novel was very clever. There are lots of there are lots of revelations that occur, but it was delicious. It was twisty. Again, just clever, and I really adored this book. But I'm curious, Lauren, where did the concept for this novel come from? I mean, I know we're used to reading about twins. Now we have triplets, but also the undercurrent of the foster care system, because I gathered that in the novel. And you've mentioned it here a few times as well. So I'm wondering, where did the inspiration come from? And, was this something you intended to tackle in the novel as well, about sisters being torn apart, the foster care system, outside of it just being a really delicious thriller?
Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that, first of all. I'm so glad you found it delicious. I when I was in the 5th grade, I was assigned The Great Gilly Hopkins by Catherine Patterson. And the assignment was to read one chapter. But I ended up just sprawled out on my bed reading the entire book in pretty much one sitting. And it was about a young girl named Gilly who had been bounced around in the foster system. She had been abandoned. She was bitter, and she was sent to live with a foster family that ended up being very kind and not what she was used to. And she tried to sabotage things for herself. And I won't ruin the story. It's a great story. I would recommend. But it introduced the idea of the foster care system to me. And that's a topic I've always been very passionate about growing up. And as an adult, I've consumed probably way too much true crime. And I've seen how killers and people that sort of end up in these true crime scenarios, they tend to work alone. They tend to be lone wolves, and there's that saying, there's no honor among thieves. And I often wonder if the subjects of these stories have any capacity to love another, or if it's entirely self-serving, or if it's maybe a mix of both. If there's, I've always just wondered what's going on. And I wanted to experiment with the idea of having siblings, and not only siblings, but identical siblings who had been brought together, who only had each other, who didn't have the luxury of, an outside family or another friend, really anybody but each other, to see where their loyalties would lie, and what that would look like if they had some kind of a pact.
Right, that is amazing. I never I didn't know that book. I actually just Googled it while we're here chatting. The Great Gilly Hopkins by Catherine Patterson. So I think I'll be giving that one a read. But I'm curious about your writing process, because you did mention at the top, you've previously published books before, specifically YA and children's books. Readers can find them under Ren DeStefano. I want to know about, because this really isn't a name change, it's just an alteration, because I'm assuming Ren is, kind of short for Lauren, like the last three
Yeah.
letters of Lauren. So tell me about, this slight alteration in name, and how was the writing and publishing journey for How I'll Kill You similar to or different from your YA and children's books?
Yeah, so I wanted to leave a lot of similarities. I'm very proud of my young adult work, and I'm really grateful for my young adult audience. And I didn't want to completely change my name and maybe make some ambiguity there. But I also wanted to draw a line in the sand and say, this is a completely different side of my writing. This is a completely different genre. It's adult characters. It's very much adult situations. And I wanted to take a little bit of a different path with this one in particular. My agent and I, fortunately, we have just such a wonderful relationship. She's been with me since the very beginning in 2008, before I ever wrote a successful novel. And we've sort of grown together in this industry. And I know that she has a big passion for thrillers and for adult fiction. And so when I pitched the idea of writing an adult for her, it was actually a few years ago, and she was very honest with me. And I pitched several ideas, and she said, well, this one here is going to require this kind of research, and this one here doesn't quite seem like your voice, but let's see what you've got. And none of the ideas that I was pitching to her were quite working. And it was a little bit, I think anyone who's been in the writing process at any stage will tell you, a bit disheartening at time, and it takes a lot of persistence. But this particular story, I was watching some true crime. My brain was sort of checked out, as it is at the end of the day, right? When you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to just relax and just watch some media. And I was scrolling through some true crime, and I was thinking, I wonder, do family members of these serial killers actually get along with them? Is it all just an act? How much of it is real? And somehow this idea just kind of popped into my head of triplets. And I started writing a few sentences, and I sent it off to a friend, and her response was, "This is great. Don't screw it up." And the rest is history.
I love it. I also love just hearing that you've had this long-standing relationship with your agent. I mean, that's amazing. How long would you say it took for you to write How I'll Kill You, start to finish?
Well, the funny thing is, it took me years to come up with the idea. And once I had the idea, it only took a couple of months.
Ooh, nice, nice. What would you say is the most difficult part then of your creative process? Coming up with the idea?
It's coming up with an idea and putting it in an interesting way. I think there have been lots of times I've had what I would consider an interesting idea, but there was really no interesting way to write it out in a way that somebody would want to be invested for 8 to 10 hours to read a book. And that's in the thriller genre in particular, but really in most genres, you have to be very mindful of the reader's time. And I want somebody to pick up a book, while their baby is napping, while they're on a bus ride for a little while, while they're on a short flight, and feel that they're getting something entertaining out of every single page they read, whether they're there for an hour or 10 minutes. And until I had the idea that accomplished that, I wasn't going to be satisfied.
Right, right, absolutely. So I'm curious though, are you working on any other books now? Are you going back to young adult and children's, or are you working on more adult books? Are you working on anything now? What can you tell us?
So at the moment, I'm playing around with one more adult idea, and then beyond that, I haven't given much thought just yet. I like to
Mhm.
sort of see the road when I get there.
Right, right. Okay, okay, sounds good. But now you have published your adult novel. Again, you've published several children's books before, YA books, and so on. But if you could look back and tell your younger writing self anything, it could be at the start of the journey before you even had a book, or maybe midway to where you are now, just, going back to any time of your choosing, what would you tell your younger writing self?
It's not gonna be pretty. I would say that the path to writing a book it's very disheartening and it's very isolating at times. And the biggest recurring fear that you'll face is whether or not you'll ever get there. Am I spending these hours writing and coming up with these ideas and throwing away thousands of words for a reason? Am I going to get there? And the answer, not just for my younger self, but I would say for anybody that's out there writing, is if you keep doing it, you will get there.
Right, right, absolutely. I love it. Love it. Okay, Lauren, let's hop into your reading life a bit because even though we're here talking about how I'll kill you, readers want to know, I want to know, we can't get enough of those book recommendations. So tell me about the last book or books that you finished reading that you'd now recommend.
Well, so I am in the final chapters, and I don't want to spoil anything, but in the final chapters of All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers, who I found because she hosts the Crime Junkie podcast, which has kept me company on many long car rides. And I'm also rereading a young adult book called All My Rage by Saba Tahir, which I recommend to just everybody, any age, recommend to everybody. It's just a beautiful, beautiful ride. So and in addition to those, I'm just also, as always, consuming way too much true crime. And I have some favorites there as well, but I'll spare you.
No, no, no. What are your three podcasts? Let me just pick three. What are the three podcasts that you check in with, let's say, at least once a week?
So I am going to say Stephanie Harlow. She has, in addition to a YouTube channel where she covers true crime there, she also has, I believe it's called Crime Weekly,
Hmm.
which she is with a co host named Derek Levasseur, who is, I believe, a retired cop. And they sort of break down some older cases and also some newer cases. And they do some things more recently where they'll cover ongoing cases.
Okay.
And I really turn to them because they seem to really care deeply about the families involved and the victims of these situations, and they try really hard to get everything accurate, which I appreciate. And I'm also, as always, a huge fan of Bailey Sarian, who, in addition to a YouTube channel, she also does a podcast version where she breaks down a lot of old cases. More recently, I believe Ted Bundy, Jack the Ripper, things like that. And I've also fallen into a fairly new podcast, which I don't believe it's ongoing. I believe it's a set number of episodes, but I'm in the middle of them, called Into the Red Clay, which is interestingly about a mafia in sort of the southern belt of the US, which I was not aware was even a thing that happened.
Ooh, sounds very interesting and fascinating. So, yay, not only did we get books, but we got podcast recommendations.
Here for everything.
Love it. So, getting back to the book recs, though, what would you say was your favorite childhood book?
So I'm gonna say Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, which it doesn't really have much to do with true crime, but for those who haven't heard of it, it's about a bunch of kind of lab rats and field mice, and they were subject to some experimentation that gave them the ability to communicate, speak, and read and write, and sort of the shenanigans that ensue as a result of that.
Oh, awesome. Sounds good. Now, I know you mentioned earlier that you were rereading a book, All My Rage, which I was just like, okay, this is amazing because it's very rare I encounter someone who is rereading a contemporary novel. You know, usually we revisit the classics and so on. And it's a big debate, a big conversation in the book community about rereading books. I mean, there's so many books, so little time. But
Mm.
why shouldn't we revisit the books that we've read and loved? So, what's your take on rereading books?
Well, I think that the purpose of a book is ultimately enjoyment. You can read books for lots of reasons. You can read to learn a new skill, to see a different perspective, to maybe broaden your horizons a bit. But I don't think there's any shame in just purely enjoying a book, just finding some comfort, going back to a place that you consider to be sort of a home for you. And even just reading something and maybe seeing it in a different light than you did before.
Hmm.
Now that you know how it ends, how it all works out, and you're not so much reading to turn the pages and see what happens next, but slowing down a bit and appreciating the writing style or the characters or just kind of rereading favorite moments.
Absolutely. I just love it when, readers out there and folks out there can give themselves permission to revisit a book, if it's something that they really want to do. Like, again, it's for your enjoyment. So
Mhm.
go for it. Absolutely. Okay. Any classics on your radar, though?
Oh, well, classic Stephen King.
Love it.
When I was younger, my father was really into the classic horror movies. So
Mhm,
Hitchcock, the kind of the older Stephen King stuff.
mhm.
And we had a little bit of a game where he would show me old movies and I would say, "That's not even scary. A bunch of birds attacking people, that's not a big deal," whatever. Um, but I as I got older, I started reading Stephen King, and I would say I'll occasionally go back and sort of reread Carrie or The
Mhm,
Shining,
mhm.
just bits and pieces, and I think of that episode of Friends where they put that book in the freezer because it was so cold.
Yes.
But for me, it's in a twisted way, it's sort of just a fond childhood memory of watching horror movies with my dad.
I love that. And when you mentioned Hitchcock, there was the Daphne du Maurier, The Birds, and I rewatched that with my husband, I think 2 years ago. I think it was a
Mhm.
pandemic rewatch, honestly,
Okay.
in the thick of the pandemic, let's say. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so silly. But it's nostalgic. It's kind of cool, I think, going back. And yes, Stephen King is a classic. I don't care what anyone says.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. If I can remember not being allowed to read Stephen King as a child because of the language, then it's definitely a classic. It's old enough that I can look back and say, "This has been around as long as I have or longer."
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Lauren, are there any books you're looking forward to reading in the year ahead? I mean, 2023 is shaping up to be a really good year for books. I know it's early days yet, but what books are you looking forward to reading?
Yeah, so there are quite a few on my list. I might be a little bit behind because I believe a few of these are available, but I've been looking forward to Jackal by Aaron E. Adams. Just looks very fascinating, very interesting cover, and The Violin Conspiracy by I believe it's Brendan Slocum.
Yes.
And obviously, I love May Cobb, so I'm very much looking forward to A Likeable Woman.
Sounds good. And I was actually just thinking, I remember speaking to Brendan Slocum. So that podcast episode is on there, you guys. I don't remember what number, but just go back. It's a
Okay.
really, really great conversation. He is really just a great writer, lovely person to chat to. So yeah.
I'll have to look for that episode. I'm going to do that
Uh,
immediately.
Yay! Amazing. No, he was really cool. Really, really, really cool. Okay, so on the podcast, like we love helping readers in different stages of their reading journey because, we're all unique, we're all different. Some people are getting back into the habit, some people have been avid readers their entire lives. But for someone who wants to incorporate more reading, so maybe they feel like, well, I'm not reading enough, I want to get more reading in, or maybe someone is at the beginning of their reading journey, what advice would you give to them, and what tips have worked for you to kind of start reading or reading more?
So I'm going to destigmatize putting down a book you're not enjoying to make room for one that you are. It's okay if you're reading a book and you're realizing I'm just trying to get to the end of this, I'm not enjoying it. It's okay to put that book down. It's okay to return it to the library, lend it to somebody else, and read something that excites you. And when you find that book that's really forcing you to turn the pages and you just want to just basically shove it into your face as fast as possible, those are the books that you're going to get through much faster and have the most enjoyment out of. So I would say it's okay to put down anything that's not doing that for you, and make room for something new. It's not, I know when we're little, we're taught to eat what's on our plate, right? Finish everything. But books don't have to be that way. And I would also say that in the 13 or so years that I've been in this industry, I've really seen a rise in incredibly talented audiobooks and the narrators that really make the story come to life in just an amazing way. And I would say audiobooks. You can download them from your library, you can get them on Audible, you can find them wherever you find books, but audiobooks, they'll really help you when you're trying to get some chores done or do some driving or anything else where you can't maybe physically hold a book.
Absolutely. Like I co-sign all of that, all of it. Just absolutely put those books down if they're not working for you. Audiobooks have come a long way. I mean, I
Mhm.
remember books on tape. Now their whole production, they are beautifully done. I mean, these narrators are super, super, super talented, and there are just so many great options out there. So if print isn't working for you, listening to audio is still reading. So
Mhm.
no matter what, you're consuming that content. So that's great.
For sure.
Amazing. Okay, Lauren. So we love bookstores on this podcast. Specifically, we love our indie booksellers because they put books into the hands of readers, and, we support that all around. So share with us some of your favorite bookstores. It could be local, something from your travels.
Mhm.
Just tell me about some of your favorite bookshops.
So my very favorite is RJ Julia, which is here in Connecticut in Madison, and they really go above and beyond. They'll ship books if you call them, and you call them from out of state or even out of the country, and you want to ask for a recommendation or you're looking for a signed copy. They make it happen. They have just been so wonderful, and it's great to see people that really love books and love readers working together. I also really love Malaprops in North Carolina. I've never been there physically, but there are so many authors in that kind of Asheville area, and I'm always looking for signed copies, and they're my go-to. I know that they'll have it, so they ship very quickly. They've just been wonderful, and it's great to see booksellers that love reading and love readers. And um I also really have to shout out any kind of used bookstore or thrift shop that really do a great job of even just having the staff be well read in what's available. And you come in and you say, I'm looking for a book about a bear having a picnic, and they'll find you something.
Absolutely. I live for a good used bookshop. Love the local indies that also have signed books, and you can call them. So if you don't have an indie where you live, which I don't, but you can love on one from afar, and they
Mhm.
communicate with you, they'll take your call, they'll respond to an email. Yeah, I think they're just such important parts of our literary ecosystem, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think most authors, if there is an indie in their area, when they have a book release, they usually do shout out that indie to say, hey, if you want some signed copies, this is where you can go.
Hmm.
It's definitely something I do with RJ Julia. They'll work with anybody wherever you are. They'll help you get that book that you're looking for.
Amazing. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, Lauren, let's get back to How I'll Kill You. Again, I know you've done your job as the author. You've written the book, you've given it to us. I
Mhm.
thoroughly enjoyed it. It was just very
Thank you.
delicious. It was just one of those thrillers. Yes, I was turning the pages, yes. But it was just also good, the other little nuggets in there as well. But when the reader turns the last page on your book, what are some of the reactions or thoughts you're hoping readers might have?
Well, I really hope that it's a bit of a surprising book, and that's some feedback I've been getting early on, and something I've also gotten in my children's books is I didn't expect to cry today. I didn't expect this to be such a journey. So I really hope that it gives them more than just a thriller about a serial killer. I hope it really helps people to take kind of a deep dive into the complicated relationships in their own lives with siblings, with parents, with how we're raised and how that impacts who we are, with what love looks like. I hope it leaves people properly mixed up inside.
Oh yeah, I was properly mixed up because the sister is reading about three of them, kind of getting into their minds. Quite disturbing, but also enlightening as well. Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so, so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.